I woke up feeling disoriented, my head throbbing in a way that suggested something was seriously wrong. My vision was initially hazy, but as I blinked and adjusted to the dim light around me, I realized my hands were tightly bound behind my back. I tried to move my legs, but quickly discovered they were also restrained. My heart pounded, adrenaline rushing through me as panic began to rise. The room seemed unfamiliar for a moment, but then a faint scent hit me, a mix of perfume and the distinct aroma of alcohol lingering in the air. It was a smell I'd grown to associate with my stepmother, Vanessa. She had always been a bit of a party enthusiast, rarely missing an opportunity to uncork a bottle of wine. But this felt different. Straining to hear any sound, I picked up on a soft rustling of fabric, and my head whipped toward the noise. Standing there in the doorway was Vanessa, casually leaning against the frame, a glass of wine in hand. The soft light from the hallway cast her silhouette in a striking glow. She looked different. Her normally polished appearance was slightly unkempt, with her hair falling in loose waves around her shoulders. Her lips curled into a smile as she slowly sipped from her glass, her eyes locked onto mine with an intensity I'd never seen before. "Morning, sleepyhead," she said, her voice low and teasing, with a hint of a slur, though she still managed to sound playful, almost amused by the situation. "You're probably wondering what's going on." My throat felt dry as I swallowed hard, trying to find my voice. "Vanessa, what is this? Why am I tied up?" I managed to ask, my voice shaky. She let out a soft, almost musical laugh and stepped forward, her hips swaying deliberately. My pulse quickened. "Oh, don't worry," she purred, setting her glass on the bedside table and crouching beside me. Her fingers lightly brushed my cheek as she whispered, "You're safe. I just thought we could have a little fun." "Fun?" I echoed, my voice trembling. "What kind of fun involves tying me up?" Her eyes darkened with a mischievous glint as her fingers slowly trailed down my neck, sending a shiver through my body. "The kind you'll like. If you just relax," she whispered, her breath warm against my skin. I was caught between confusion, fear, and something else, something deeper that I wasn't ready to admit just yet. Vanessa had always been beautiful, undeniably so. I'd caught myself admiring her more than once, the way she carried herself with confidence, commanding attention in any room. But this was different. This was dangerous. She stood up again, circling the bed, her gaze never leaving mine. "You know, I've been watching you for a while," she said softly, her voice laced with something darker, something more intimate. "I've seen the way you look at me. Don't think I haven't noticed." I opened my mouth to protest, to deny it, but the words stuck in my throat as she leaned closer, her face just inches from mine, her perfume filling my senses, overwhelming me. "Don't lie to me," she whispered, her lips barely grazing my ear. "I know you've thought about it. About us." Heat rushed to my face as I struggled with the wrongness of it all. "Vanessa, this isn't right," I said, my voice weak even to my own ears. She smiled again, that same teasing, dangerous smile as she ran a hand through her hair. "Maybe it's not," she replied thoughtfully, walking around to the other side of the bed. "But does it matter? You're here. I'm here. No one has to know." My mind raced as I tried to make sense of the situation. The rational part of me screamed that this was wrong, that I needed to get out of here. But there was another part of me, quieter and darker, that was tempted by the way she looked at me, tempted by the forbidden nature of it all. Vanessa leaned against the bed, her fingers tracing soft patterns on my arm as she continued. "You know," she murmured, "I never thought I'd be in this position. I never imagined I'd feel this way about you, but here we are." Her fingers slid down to my wrist, tugging gently at the rope that held me firmly in place, her eyes locking onto mine once more. "I could untie you," she whispered, "but only if you promised to be good." My breath came in shallow gasps as I stared at her, trying to process what was happening. This couldn't be real. It had to be some kind of twisted dream. But the ropes around my wrists and the heat of Vanessa's body so close to mine told me otherwise. Everything felt too real. "Do you want me to untie you?" she asked, her voice soft but firm, her fingers toying with the knot. She tugged at it just enough to loosen it a bit, though not enough to set me free. "Or do you want to see where this goes?" My mind was a mess of conflicting feelings, fear, desire, and confusion. I knew what the right answer was, what I should say, but I couldn't form the words. Instead, I found myself nodding slightly, a quiet, hesitant yes escaping my lips. Vanessa's grin widened, satisfaction flickering in her eyes as she began to undo the ropes around my wrists. She worked with deliberate care, her fingers brushing against my skin, sending jolts of electricity through me. When the last knot was finally undone, she stepped back, giving me the freedom I had craved only moments ago. Yet now that I was free, I remained still, just lying there, unsure of what to do next, staring up at her. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to," she murmured, her tone almost tender. "But I think we both know what you want." She leaned down, her lips hovering just above mine, her breath warm on my face. "All you have to do is take it." I hesitated, my mind still spinning from the whirlwind of emotions, but as she moved closer, her lips barely brushing against mine, something inside me snapped. My hands, trembling slightly, reached up to pull her nearer, closing the gap between us. The kiss was slow at first, cautious, as if we were testing the waters, unsure of what would follow. But gradually the hesitation vanished, replaced by something deeper, more urgent. Vanessa's fingers wove through my hair as she kissed me harder, her body pressing against mine, leaving no doubt about where this was heading. Every rational thought I had evaporated, drowned out by the heat of her touch and the intensity of her kiss. There was no turning back now the line had been crossed, and neither of us cared anymore. Vanessa pulled back slightly, just enough to look at me, her eyes dark and filled with desire. "See," she whispered, breathless. "I told you this would be fun." I couldn't respond, couldn't find the words. All I could do was pull her back, my lips crashing against hers once more as the world around us disappeared, leaving only the two of us tangled together in a moment that felt both dangerous and inevitable. The moment was overwhelming. The taste of her lips lingered as our bodies entwined, the tension simmering just below the surface. Every touch, every breath felt like it carried the weight of something forbidden, yet impossible to resist. Vanessa's fingers traced lightly over my skin, her touch delicate but electrifying, sending waves of heat coursing through me. It was as if she knew exactly how to draw me deeper into this, into her world where nothing mattered but desire. I could feel the shift in her demeanor. What had started as playful teasing had transformed into something far more intense. Her eyes bore into mine, searching for something, and in them, I saw a vulnerability I hadn't expected. For a fleeting moment, the confidence that had carried her through the night seemed to waver, replaced by a softness, an unspoken need. She wanted this as much as I did, but beneath her bold exterior, there was something fragile, something she was risking just by being here with me. As I looked up at her, all my earlier doubts began to fade. This wasn't just about the thrill of the forbidden or the irresistible pull of her presence. It was something deeper. Maybe it was the alcohol running through her veins, or maybe it was the vulnerability she was showing me now. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was something she needed, something we both needed, even if we didn't fully understand why. The lines between right and wrong had blurred so completely that all I could see was her. Vanessa's hands slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer as she whispered my name, her voice barely audible over the sound of our breathing. There was something raw and desperate in the way she said it, like she was holding on to this moment as if it were her lifeline, and maybe it was. We were both lost in each other, and the further we went, the less I cared about the world outside of this room. The softness of her lips, the warmth of her body pressed against mine, it all felt inevitable, as though every unspoken tension between us had led to this moment. It wasn't just passion driving us now, but a connection we had both been denying. With every kiss, every touch, it became harder to remember why this wasn't supposed to happen, why we were supposed to resist. All I knew was that I didn't want it to stop. For a brief moment she pulled back, her chest rising and falling as she caught her breath. Her eyes searched mine, looking for some reassurance, some sign that I wanted this as much as she did. I didn't hesitate. Without a word, I reached out, gently running my hand along her cheek, pulling her back toward me. The warmth between us reignited instantly, and once again we were swept up in the current of our shared need, no longer fighting it but embracing it fully. Time seemed to blur as we moved together, each moment flowing into the next, each breath heavy with desire. We had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. Yet, amid the heat of it all, something unspoken lingered between us, an understanding that this wasn't just a fleeting moment, but something that had been building for far longer than we'd realized. It wasn't just about passion, it was the release of everything we had been holding back. Now we were free. The intensity between us only grew, like a wave crashing down, unstoppable. Vanessa's hands explored my body with a sense of urgency that made my heart race faster. Each touch felt like a spark, igniting something deep inside me, something primal and impossible to contain. I responded with the same intensity, my hands tracing the contours of her body, her skin soft and warm under my fingertips. There was no more hesitation, no more doubt, just the raw force of attraction that had been simmering between us for far too long. Vanessa leaned closer, her breath hot on my neck, her lips brushing against the sensitive skin as she whispered my name again, filled with desire and longing. I held her tighter, feeling the tension grow between us, the air thick with anticipation. She moved slowly, deliberately, her body pressing into mine in a way that made every nerve in my body ache for more. It was as if she was savoring each moment, stretching out the time until the world beyond us faded completely. Her heartbeat thudded against my chest, fast and erratic, mirroring my own pulse. Her hands slid down my arms, her fingers gripping me as though she feared I might slip away. But there was no chance of that. We were locked together, lost in the heat of the moment, every kiss and touch pulling us deeper into a whirlwind of sensations. The tension was almost unbearable, the hunger for one another palpable. The only thing that mattered was the connection between us, the undeniable chemistry that had finally been set free. As she pulled me closer, her lips found mine again, this time with more force, more passion than before. The kiss consumed me, drowning out everything else except the sound of our ragged breathing. There was a desperation in the way we clung to each other, a shared understanding that we had crossed a line together, and there was no turning back. The world outside no longer mattered, only this moment, only us. Vanessa's hands roamed everywhere, her body pressed so tightly against mine that it was impossible to tell where she ended, and I began. Each touch felt electric, sending shockwaves through me, and I couldn't get enough. The air around us buzzed, charged with the energy we created, and every second that passed only deepened the connection. We moved in perfect sync, as if this had always been meant to happen, as if fate had brought us to this moment, no matter how wrong it seemed. The climax hit us both with a force that left us breathless, our bodies trembling as the intensity peaked, and then slowly began to fade. For a long moment we just lay there, tangled together in the aftermath of what had just happened. The room was silent now, except for the sound of our shallow breaths. Vanessa's fingers grazed my skin softly, a gentle contrast to the heat that had just consumed us. In that quiet, we both knew this was something that would change everything. As the silence settled, the reality of what we had done started to creep in, but neither of us spoke. Vanessa rested her head on my chest, her breathing gradually calming, and I could feel a slight tremor in her body. There was a weight between us now, something unspoken but heavier realization that what we had done could never be undone. We had crossed a boundary, one we could never uncross. Yet even with that knowledge, her warmth against me still felt right, like it was exactly where we were meant to be, despite the consequences. She lifted her head slightly, her eyes meeting mine in the dim light. There was a vulnerability there, a silent question lingering between us. What happens now? I didn't have an answer, and neither did she. But at that moment, it didn't seem to matter. I gently brushed a strand of hair from her face, my fingers lingering on her cheek. The softness in her expression mirrored my own feelings, a mixture of confusion and peace. Whatever came next, we would face it together, for better or worse. Vanessa's lips curved into a small, tender smile, and she leaned in to kiss me once more, slow and gentle, as if sealing an unspoken promise between us. When she pulled away, she sighed quietly, resting her head on my shoulder. The night had shifted everything, and though the future was uncertain, in that quiet, shared moment, it didn't feel as overwhelming. We were still wrapped in the aftermath of something powerful, something neither of us had anticipated, but something we couldn't deny. For now, all that mattered was the closeness, the connection we had found, and whatever was to come would come in time.